Hey everybody, welcome to opening night of the Decibels Music Film Festival. Uh, for those of you who weren't at the Roxy and are checking this out on live, you just seen the wonderful film Dinner in America. And we're lucky enough to have the filmmaker, director Adam Raymeyer. Thanks for being here, Adam.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
So you just have put together a really fun film and was wondering, how did you know that this was kind of the journey that you kind of want and kind of cinematic tale you wanted to tell?
I mean, things are always changing and morphing as you go along. There's the idea, the initial idea that I had for this and the script. And I'd argue to say that like almost anytime you cast something, it morphs into something new. And Emily and Kyle, like just by their involvement alone, that changes ideas that you have in your head immediately upon whenever you cast a movie. And it was what they brought to the film was just amazing. Like it was really fresh for me. And I think Emily was just like, she had such a, from her own personal life, she brought a lot to Patty. Like even her shoes that she wears in the movie, the Chuck Taylors were her Chuck Taylors when she was awkward like Patty. So it's like it's kind of symbolic and everything too. But Kyle brought his own experience and his own baggage and stuff into the film. And so I think when you you have an idea for something, and then when you get to the point of casting it and executing it, it sort of morphs into like a new thing, a collaborative thing. It's a lot of fun. And in this case, I think what was kind of almost a cartoon on the page, there's a real humanness that Emily and Kyle bring to it. So that was awesome for me to to experience that, and all of us, to collaborate on this particular film.
Yeah, and so out of curiosity, can you tell us a little bit about like your filmmaking background and growing up in the sense of like, was there something about kind of the stories that kind of resonated here of like what were you like in your youth?
Um, well, like Simon, the one element that's the truest to me is that Simon, as this kid that likes to do home recording, that's definitely a like sensory element for me that I'm very like I grew up 4-tracking and stuff like just constantly. I didn't do it like instead of going to the senior prom or whatever, I recorded like 10 songs that night, that type of stuff. So I was a big avid home recorder and still am to this day. I love doing it. I love recording. I moved on from like the 4-tracker to like a 24-tracker, but that's what I love to do. So to be able to do something like that in this film and show my love for music and my love for recording, because it's hard too, because to try to share that with somebody, what it's like when you record a song, what Emily and Kyle end up doing in the basement was like my attempt to show the audience what that feels like. So we and the story regarding the song is that I had asked Emily to bring a bunch of poetry and a bunch of like love letters to Simon to Detroit when she came to film, and we wrote the song together. Like it was one of the very first things we did in our rehearsal period for the film. And she had like all these pages of stuff, and we just kind of went through and cherry picked things that popped out to us. And that first line, "I'm a watermelon slammed into your driveway, crack me open so I feel the air inside me," was the first thing that we were like drawn to. And it was like, oh, this is probably where this song starts. So we went with that, and then it just kind of grew from there. But we recorded the song in about 25-30 minutes, like a little demo of it, how it worked. And then we slept on it. And then the next day we ended up like just laying down all the tracks. And Emily, I think that's her second take so she did 2 takes, and that was the second take of her vocal track that she performs in the movie.
Nice. So, like what would you say your kind of filmmaking approach is like during production, or specifically with this film. I mean, like, is there kind of kind of an improvisational nature to it, or are things very kind of just like, you know, specifically executed of how you imagine it? Because I imagine that, with any sort of kind of independent film, and nowadays times all can be tight, and so how much
Yeah.
of it is the kind of, you know, I guess just needing to kind of execute what you've already kind of developed through those rehearsals, versus what you're just
Yeah,
like around the process, especially with a journey film like this.
I'm very comfortable with improv. I come from a strong improvisational background, and then also like as a filmmaker, as a documentarian, and also as a musician. And I've done that before many times in other projects, and all of my music projects are that way. So this one, Dinner in America, was more of a controlled, like, we're just going to do, like, we didn't stray from the script. There's maybe 2 or 3 lines that were improvised. I think they were all provided by either Pat or Mary Lynn, because they're great at, improv, and like they're king and queen there. So that was great, and that was a lot of fun. But there's a specific rhythm with this script, and if you stray from that, it doesn't work. So it was like super important to just have things land and hit like exactly where they needed to hit, for this. So there was no improv, but I'm very open to improv. And like I said, I've mostly done that type of thing, whether it's music or other film experiments, that type of thing. But not for this.
And what can you share a little bit of the background? So, how many days did you wind up shooting the film, and like what, like, I mean, was it kind of the blur that one would imagine with this sort of film, or what was it like?
No, I mean, the producers that I worked with all made sure that I had, enough time to do it, not in this sort of like, a lot of things these days, people try to cram in like 15, 16, 18 days. This is definitely not that type of film. I didn't want to make a film like that. And I still don't. I don't have projects that I want to do in 15 or 18 days. That's insane. It was 25. It was 25. And, I think there were days that were like, all of the stuff in the basement was done in like an 8-hour or 10-hour period. So that was like probably, a day that I wish I had 2 days for, just as far as when they were creating the song, and when he was revealing to her that, he was her music boyfriend. I wanted to make sure that, I had enough time, but that's the compromise that you have whenever you go down that path and you make something. So I knew what I was getting into. So that said, like, my DP, and I, Jean-Philippe Bernier, like, we had a plan for everything. We mapped everything out ahead of time, and then we stayed to it. And if anything, we would drop things, that we weren't able to get. But I had always built it around getting everything I needed before we got out. So that probably has something to do with my background in documentary filmmaking, and just not, if you miss the moment, you miss the moment. So I try to keep on top of that, always in my own work and what I do.
Well, I think the film has kind of such a kind of unique vision and tone to it. I'm kind of curious, is like, as you were kind of doing your research and kind of prepping, like, whether it be the production design, elements that we finally see on, like, what were some of the things that kind of inspired you, that you kind of mixed together to kind of create this vision, whether it be like other films or music, or or literature? Were there certain things where you're like, oh, I really like this, and you decided to bring it to this film, or not?
Um, not off the top of my head. I think the energy that once you start working with a production designer, and you start working with your, director of photography, you start working with your actors, like a lot of those, like, everybody has their idea of what this thing is. And it's just, I think as a director, you're an energy manager, like, of everybody's energy. And so, but at the same time, just getting out what you specifically, want to say with the film. I think 90% of it's casting. You write something that's, airtight, and you just get good actors in, and then they do their thing, and then it just sort of takes a new life. And then I also edited this film too, so you get to the back end of it, and then you have a lot of options, and that's like, you start to see the gifts that your actors gave you and what little presents. And it's just I'm very aware that everything's very cause and effect. So if you modify something up front, it affects the back end and vice versa. So it all builds on that. I'm very aware of that, like when I'm working, and whether it's on the day or whether it's long after, when you're the really thankless part of post-production that everyone seems to just kind of gloss over, like the film's in post, but it's very nerve-wracking, and that's where the real magic happens sometimes.
Well, maybe that's a good thing to kind of share before we wrap up. I mean, did you know going into the film that that you wanted to edit the film, and was that partly through your kind of experience with documentary filmmaking, or was there just something about this particular story that?
I think I have the skill set. Budgetarily, it made a lot of sense at the time. I mean, it would have been nice to work in tandem with somebody, I think, and kind of see like part of the cut as we went along. But in reality, there's only so much time, in the day. You're and transporting back to and from set, and all the other little administrative things that need to happen, in the peripheral too, and decisions that need to be made for the next day or the next 2 or 3 days if you're switching location, and you're hearing, oh, we didn't get a whack-a-mole machine, and what will this do or that, what I mean? There's just like there's a lot to it, like especially in like lower budget filmmaking, we don't have the luxury of time. So in this particular instance, it was just like everything got shot. I don't think most of the footage is even, I wasn't looking at dailies, I wasn't looking at anything. It was just, trusting that it was there, because I'd see it on set, and my editor brain works while I'm shooting. I'm logging everything in my head, how it's going to cut and stitch it together. And so I'm always really confident before I leave a scene that I have everything that I need for it. And I think for the most part in this film I did. There were a couple days that I think with every film, the problem with every independent film is the first act problem, almost everyone. So in this particular case, in my edit, Simon and Patty weren't getting together until like 39 minutes into the movie. And that would be insane, to like, I think as is, it just teeters on, it rides the finest little tightrope right now of like, am I going to bail on this movie completely or not? And if you do, then there's a surprise if you do. But if you get out prematurely, you don't get to experience really the organic kind of love that blossoms between these two. So yeah, what was the question? Shit.
I think it was about your choice of being an editor, but I think that kind of
Yeah. I like being, I like editing, but I don't know if I'm in love with it to the degree of like, wanting to, sometimes it could just be insane,
Right.
It can be really insane.
Well, cool. Well, thanks again for sharing the film with us, Adam. I always kind of let the audience know that we as the audience at film festivals are really the kind of grassroots kind of team, to kind of like help spread the word about these films that we're lucky enough that filmmakers are share with us. So, what's the kind of next step for the film, or what's the best way to kind of follow its progress, or kind of shout it from the rafters about this kind of really great film that you?
I mean, tweet about it. If you love it, tweet about it. It's always great. I think it's a great way to do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for sharing Dinner in America with us as our co-opening film here at Decibels Music Film Festival. And have a great day, Adam.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Thanks.